Hi. Oh my gosh. Feels so great to be live again. Hi, Larissa. Boy, you popped right on there. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be on tonight. I've got some really amazing stuff to share about what happened to me when I was so sick. Hey, Barb. And some God-incidences and some aha moments and some lessons learned. And I just thought everyone could benefit from the wisdom that God's been pouring into me the last few weeks. And so I hope you find a lot of value in what he's been sharing with me, and I hope I do a good job of sharing it with you. For anyone who might be new, I'm Mary Moss, and I live in Richmond, Virginia. I'm an author, a poet, a speaker, writer in my dream life, and in my daytime job, I'm an office administrator for a large transportation project here in Richmond. So I have a lot of diversity in my life, kind of two different worlds almost. And I really enjoy doing both. So, Natalie, hi, you did make it home. I hope you didn't rush, but I'm glad you hopped on. I couldn't remember how long it had been since I went live. At least a couple weeks, I know. I thought I might go live last week, and I was still just too worn out after, trying to push myself to get back into work at my day job, and I just felt like I needed to just pull back for another week. And I'm glad I did, because I'm feeling really, really good. I still have to, kind of watch myself, because once I get feeling good and get going, I want to just push, and I know that I need to just pace myself so that I can be back to 100% and stay at 100%. So I'm not going to babble on too much about all of that. I know a lot of people were really concerned about what was going on with me, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but there were a lot of, it was kind of like a perfect storm of all the bad things that could happen took place. And I had that crud that a lot of people have with the bronchitis and the ear infection and the sinus infection, and it started like on our way home from Florida at Christmas time. Started with a sore throat and a sore ear, and rapidly got worse and worse with a terrible cough. And I ended up, I went to the emergency doctor, the doc in a box, a couple times, and was prescribed medications. I had some prescriptions, some over the counter, and it kept coming back. As soon as I would stop the antibiotics, it would come back. As soon as I would stop the oral steroids, it would come back within a couple days. So I was on my third round of oral steroids, and I think my third round of antibiotics, and a whole plethora of other things to help control my symptoms, in addition to my regular, medications that I take. And I just, one morning, I got dressed, I guess, to go to work, and Jim just happened to come home for no set reason. He doesn't usually come home once he goes out for the day. He's a Uber and Lyft driver, and once he goes out in the morning after I leave for work, he's usually out at least till lunchtime. But he happened to come home that morning, and he realized that I wasn't acting right. I was just kind of not making any sense, and he got me right to the emergency room. And thank God, because I don't know what would have happened. It wasn't a stroke, thank goodness. There are a couple of things that they said presented as or was like, but after talking to my sister, who's a doctor, talk about a God incident, and talking with my doctor and with a couple of other people who were there with me, we really think it was just the perfect storm, the steroids and some of the other stuff and just being sick forced my blood pressure to go up really high. And so it caused me to just kind of break down a little bit mentally, so that I was just really confused. It didn't last very long, thankfully. And, that later that morning, I started to get back to myself, and thankfully, had no long-term damage. The brain's firing like it always has been, thankfully. But it was scary. It was really scary. So but God really used that time. He used that feeling of being scared and powerless and out of control, but he also used that time of forced rest to really pour into me. And I'm grateful for that. And that's what I really want to share tonight. So, yeah, the first God incidents, which I don't know if all of you are familiar with that term, but a long time ago, one of my mentors told me that there's no such thing as a coincidence, because God is in everything that happens. And when we have like serendipity or things that we weren't expecting, it's really a God incidence. And so that's what I call them now. And it reminds me that he really is in charge of everything. But yeah, so the first one was that Jim just happened to come home and find me in that confused state, and got me to the emergency room, and they were able to do some things and get me back to myself really quickly, which I'm so grateful for, because I still have so much I want to do. Another thing that is a God incidence, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. My dad, who lives in Seattle along with like 98.9% of my family, lives on the West Coast, had what turned out to be a non-emergency medical issue. And so they were getting ready to, one of my sisters, I guess, was getting ready to let Jim know, or he was letting them know what was going on, and they realized, oh yeah, we really need a group chat. So they started a big group chat so that everybody, could have the same conversation all at the same time. I wasn't in it, of course, but, like the kids were in it, and all the siblings and my dad, so that everybody knew what was going on, which was really nice. And we don't typically do that. Usually it's like one person will tell me this, or one person will tell me that, or, they'll, different ones of us will share information. So this way everybody was on the same page. So that was really nice. Another God incident that's been wonderful over the years is that one of my sisters and her husband are doctors. And so we had her for doing long distance doctoring throughout the process, and asking questions, and helping us navigate all that. A couple of other God incidences was one, my friend Andrea Purdue, who I'm collaborating on my next project with, just happened to be able to rearrange her schedule. I can't imagine how busy she must have been. But Jim reached out to her to let him know, what was going on, and she dropped everything and came over, and she spent most of Wednesday with us there in the hospital, and then a lot of Thursday. After that, she had meetings at church and things that she really couldn't miss. But it gave Jim the opportunity, to go home and do the things he needed to do, feed the dogs and change his clothes, and of course go home at night. But, go get dinner and that type of thing. So just the fact that she happened to be available, and of course was willing to give up 2 days of her life to sit with us. Another God incidence is that when we began planning this retreat that's going to happen in August, Andrea was going to be one of the team members. She was going to do a presentation. And then when we had to change up the dates, it didn't work out for her to be able to do it, which really bummed us out. But, life happens, and when you have 6 people, you can't, you can't always make it work for everybody. So I asked her after we realized that, I said, do you want me to just take you out of the little group chat that the leadership team is in, since so you don't get all those extra notifications, or do you want me to just leave you in there? I said, I really value your judgment and your wisdom and input. And she said, well, it doesn't matter. She said, whatever you want to do. She says, it won't hurt my feelings if you take me out, but you can leave me in there too. So I did. And I'm so glad I did, because she could let the retreat team know what was going on. And I mean, who better to pray for you than a bunch of people who are planning a spiritual retreat, right? So because she was already part of that group, she didn't have to scramble around and try to figure out who she needed to reach out to let them know, and also to let them know why I was kind of out of commission for a few days, why I wasn't answering notifications and things. And of course, she also notified, John Eric and the adventure team and let them know. She just kind of took my phone and said, okay, who do I need to get in touch with? So I was grateful that we had that, and it was a great comfort and relief to Jim, because there's no way he could have managed everything without losing his mind. Another God incident, this is really cool. Of course, when you first get admitted to the hospital, they're coming in and checking and getting you situated and figuring out what's going to work best for you. And, the nurses and the doctors, and they're changing shifts. Well, Thursday morning, there was finally a time that it was really quiet in the room, and I was in a semi-private room. I had a roommate, and we had a curtain down the middle. And I hadn't really seen her. I mean, if I would get up, to use the restroom, I'd see her, but she was sleeping a lot. And it was just the two of us in the room for a few minutes, and I guess I had, coughed and sat up or something, so she knew I was awake, and she called over to me, and she said, I love your book, Miss Mary. And I was like, what? I didn't know who that was. I didn't know her. She goes, yeah, I love your book. And I said, well, thank you. I said, how do you know about my book? And she said that her sister had a copy of Woman at the Well, and that she had lent it to her, and she read it. And I was just blown away. So that was a really cool thing, but it was just one of those random things that you just never know when you're going to run into somebody, and how, what your connection's going to be. Let's see. So those were pretty cool. I was feeling really kind of blown away by all of that. There was another big one that I'll talk about. This last one, kind of, I'll come back to it. How it was a God incident. My roommate was a really neat lady, but she had tons and tons of health issues, and was really, really sick, and I felt so bad for her. And it made me realize how blessed I am that they could fix me really quickly and send me home back to my life, and then I had decisions to make about lifestyle and all of that. But she never complained. She was always pleasant to me, to the nurses, to the doctors, to anyone who called her or came by to visit. Just so pleasant. And she never complained about anything they had to do, or about her situation. So it was a real lesson to me about, about gratitude, and about how just because our life is not going exactly the way we want on any given day, it doesn't mean that we can't be pleasant to other people, and can't have a good outlook, and can't treat others kindly. So that was a huge thing, and I'm grateful for that. And she asked me to Facebook friend her, which I did before I left the hospital. Oh yeah, that's the other aha. I'll tell you about that in a minute. One of the other things that God revealed to me was that our legacy isn't what we do. I'll circle back to that in a second. One of the other God incidences was that right before I ended up going to the hospital, in the social media coaching group, yes, we can always be a blessing to others. That's right, and she was. While we were in the doing the social media coaching group, we had just finished up doing dream boards, and Coach talked about, how so often we do a 1-year plan. This is what I'm going to accomplish this year, or we do a 3 to 5 year plan. And he said, that we're getting it wrong, that we need to have a 100-year plan. And even when I was telling Jim about that tonight, I was just sharing him a little bit about what I was going to talk about. He said, what do you mean? And it's about legacy, right? It's about thinking. We need to change our thinking and take ourselves seriously and our dreams seriously, and how we dream and how big we dream seriously, because we've learned that our dreams are for the world. So if we're going to leave an impact in the world that's as big as God intends, we need to have that big vision for our lives. And I realized, like with my book, a stranger in a hospital had read my book. And I was thinking, I could have posted about that book every single day on social media. I could have done events every weekend all over the state. I don't know that would have ever made an impact. I don't know how her sister got a copy of my book. It's something that when she gets home she's in a rehab facility right now. And when she gets home, we're going to reconnect and I'm going to ask her. But it occurred to me, I think so often we work so hard to make a difference, to, I want to help people, and, I want to start all these groups, and I want to have all these pages, and I want to do all these things. And I can remember years ago when I was really active in my church, and I was on every committee, and I was going to meetings every night of the week, and I was doing stuff with my kids, and, and working full time, and just doing all the time. And what God reminded me of, what our coach John Eric talks about, is that you don't create a legacy by doing. You create a legacy by living a life of intention and purpose, and living into your dream and pouring into other people. And it just really made me, it caught me short. And it really made me realize that I was starting to fall back into that trap, of thinking I have to be really busy because I want to leave a legacy. But you can't force it. You can't say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this so that I leave a legacy. That's not how it happens. And it made me rethink a lot of things. It made me decide to do things in a different order than I was going to do them this year. And it made me realize that, I needed to take a step back and do that 100-year view. Oh, you're welcome, Dawn. I'm glad you tuned in. We need to take that 100-year view, and then we need to come in. And I'm thinking about that's my granddaughter's kids, maybe her grandchildren. What do I want to be remembered for? What's important to me? I want people to discover how their story connects to God's story for their life. And however that happens, that's what I want. That can look like 100 different things. And I think so often the tendency, at least for me, is to try to do 100 different things, right? I'm going to do 100 different things and hope that one of them works, that one of them helps the person in just the right way at just the right time. But I can't be responsible for that. You can't be responsible for that in your life either. We need to be intentional and focused. We need to keep that vision in mind. That's right. We don't want to die out for the future generations. I need to keep in mind what is that big vision that I have that God gave me for my life, and then how do I go about doing that in meaningful ways that I can be true to myself, that I can set an example of what it looks like to live in your dream, to walk in your dream, and not burn yourself out trying to do every possible variation of what that dream can look like. I mean, and I know a lot of other people are smarter than me and probably have it all figured out. But for me, it was, and I know that, but I didn't know it. I was realizing while I was recuperating that I was getting a little too busy and a little too anxious to do. And I wasn't doing the be, breathe, listen to what God is telling you, discern what He wants you to do next, and just do that. And don't try to do the 1,000,001 other things that you have on your list. And what's really crazy is that some of those things have just happened organically. I didn't have to force them. And that was really exciting. It is really exciting. I'm more looking forward to 2019 now than I was, 6 weeks ago. Of course, I'm not deathly ill either. I have my physical strength back, and I don't have that crud anymore. But, I'm not even worrying about, multitasking and trying to bless everyone. That's right, that old spread. Yep. I'm a big spreadsheet lady. I love a spreadsheet. But oh my goodness, just stop. That's what I'm saying to myself. Just cut it out. Just, write the next book. Do the next thing, do the retreat. The retreat is a big deal. And we have some fantastic people who are really organized, and all of us are able to work within our areas of giftedness preparing for this retreat. But it would be hard for all of us to make it in the process for it to be what it's intended to be if we were all running around like crazy trying to do 1,000,001 other things. So that was my biggest thing. That was my biggest thing. God really got my attention with that. He really got my attention. And to talk, going back to legacy, here's where another God incident comes in. And this is what really got me thinking, even in the hospital, about legacy and about how what we do is so important. And I don't mean do like as a profession. I don't mean, I mean who we are as people is super important. There was a gentleman who was a med tech when I was in the hospital. His name was John, and he's 60 years old. And I know this because I struck up a conversation with him, of course. He was the gentlest, kindest man. He, all right, now I'm going to do this. And he would gently take my arm and, do the blood pressure. And if, I had to, bring in a breathing treatment or something, he was so gentle and kind. And are you okay? Are you feeling good? Now, he just very attentive and genuinely concerned about, was I as comfortable as possible? And I got to talking to him, and Jim was in there at one point, and he was just trying to, figure out who everybody was and, what was going on. And he asked him, what, what is your job here? What is your occupation? And he said, I'm a med tech. And he said, but I want you to know that I'm in my country where I came from before I moved to America. I was a neurosurgeon, brain surgeon. He said, but in America, the education doesn't transfer, so I'm working on being credentialed in America. He's 60 years old. He's working as a med tech in a hospital, and my dog, she sees a dog on TV or a horse or someone. Hopefully she'll stop in a minute. Okay, Katie, it's all right. And like I said, he was the kindest, most humble man. Not a bit of resentment or bitterness. He was about helping people heal. And he knew that that's what he was made to do. And so it wasn't important to him. He didn't not do that because he couldn't do it the way he thought he should be able to, or the way he had planned to do it. He was doing it because that's what he was made to do. That's who he was made to be. And that was so powerful for me. It was just so powerful for me that I still think about him. And we're not sure. He was from England, but Jim said he can't remember what, European country, another European country. He was from one of the Slavic countries, I think, originally, because he had that kind of an accent. But yeah, I mean, I just kept thinking, I'm still thinking about him. You talk about a legacy. You talk about living in your giftedness, walking in your giftedness. He was doing what God made him to do, the way he could do it at that moment, at that point in time. And that was super, super powerful for me. It really was. So, God just really did a lot of hard work on me while he had my undivided attention. I couldn't really watch TV. I couldn't have my phone. So it was just kind of my roommate and John and the nurses and me in the hospital. And I was able to do a lot of thinking and a lot of just breathing and praying. And, God really delivered. He really showed up. And there's a lot more that's kind of mulling around. And it's just really, I feel so blessed that things were not as bad as we were afraid, or at least Jim was afraid they were going to be. That, I'm fine. I'm back, better than ever. I had a long, frank talk with my doctor about, I know my health is my responsibility, but you're my doctor. And if you tell me, X, Y, Z, I'm going to do it. And I said, maybe you're not used to having patients who do that, but I will comply. And so it was a good opportunity for me to talk with him about some things that had kind of been like in the back of my mind. And I'm like, well, how do I really bring it up? And, if he's not saying anything, maybe it's not that bad, and maybe I don't need to really worry about it. And, all the stuff we tell ourselves when we just don't want to deal with something. And so I had the opportunity through that to do that. And it made me, it changed me, I think, fundamentally about not advocating for myself, but about being self-possessed and about realizing that I'm worth it, that I'm valuable, and that I need to start treating myself that way. That I need to, and I need to not accept less than that about myself and from other people, and just the whole concept of kind of claiming my voice again, which can so easily get lost. So that was really phenomenal as well. And it just blew me away. And like I said, I'm so grateful. And I really wanted to share with you all. I know a lot of times we feel like we get lost. We lose our way. We take a step here and end up down a path, and we look back and think, wait a minute, how did I end up here? What's going on here? This is not what I pictured. This is not what I had in mind. And, it really is important for us to be diligent and to be conscious of what we're doing, to be aware that we are significant, and what we do and how we act and how we treat others is significant as well. And it's so easy to forget that. So I hope that somebody who needed to hear that is on tonight, and gets to hear that, and gets to know that you matter, and that your dreams really do matter. And I think of course I knew that, and I believed that, but I know that and believe that now, after this experience. How random is it that some woman in the hospital bed next to me has read my book? It's just so random. It made me realize, that you can't control everything that happens as a result of you doing what you're called to do and what you're supposed to be doing. So you just have to do it, and you have to be grateful that you have the opportunity to do it. And you have to realize that in no uncertain terms, there are people who need you to share your dream. There are people who need to know the lessons that you've learned so they don't feel alone, and so that they can maybe find their way a little bit more easily than you did. So anyway, I guess I got up on my soapbox a little bit tonight. It was as much to myself as anybody else, and I guess you can tell I'm pretty passionate about this in a renewed way. And there was a lot of divine intervention. There really was. I have no doubt of that. And continues. God does not just put us into the world and leave us alone. And that was a good reminder of all of that too, and good reassurance. He doesn't give us a dream and then not help us realize it. So that's what I've got for tonight. I really appreciate everybody tuning in, and I appreciate your comments, and I'm going to read every single one of them after we go off. And if you know of anybody that you think might benefit from what we talked about tonight, please feel free to share this with them. I would be just thrilled if you did that. And I hope you all have a great rest of your night. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you next Monday night. Thanks a million for tuning in.